Hello, everybody. Welcome back to SureFire Live. I'm sorry I missed you last week. I was traveling and I could not pull off the on the road Facebook chat. And so welcome. I've already got a few comments coming in. Cody Whitwood said, "It's chimney time. Let's get it." Thank you, Cody, for always being so supportive. This week in Nashville, we had a IndyCar race, and we've never had it before in Nashville, and it became really fascinating to see what those drivers do, what those high speed, those guys are just amazing. So I started watching a Netflix thing called Formula One Drive to Survive. I guess it's been in 3 seasons. I'll tell you, that thing is addictive. And what I really learned from it, I always try to take business things away from it, and what it's like to do business like that on a high level, the pressures that it has, the politics, the high level stuff is just amazing to watch that. And then, I bring it back to Chimney World, and Chimney World is so much, it's not simpler overall. It's still very stressful for us, but it helps you also understand there's so many more levels of complexity and stress and stuff. So with that, I met my guest, Ben Cross. I'd met him a few years ago, and he came to Nashville. I'd met him briefly before. We tried to hook up in Philly, where he's from, and our timing didn't work out. But he came to our very first blue collar university that we had, like at I think it was as a Bridgestone Arena, or one of the ice rinks, Ford Ice Center. And he showed, I just was impressed with how he ran his business and how he does kind of bigger projects. And from everybody I talked to, they have got a great name. And so 2 things are very hard. 1, bidding large projects. 2, getting them done on time, and keeping a good name, keeping quality high. So with that said, I'm going to bring him on. Hello, Ben.
Hey, Mark, and everybody, how are you guys doing?
Man, you're like a superstar. You got this life. I watch you a little bit on Facebook. You got like a superstar wife, and you're just like above the fray a little bit. So
no, just your average chimney guy.
What's that?
Yeah, just your average chimney guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Yeah, no.
So I've got real quick. Bart Ogden said those Indy cars bend pretty easily. Yeah, they don't rub. They don't rub in that stuff. And then Cody says, my next project is on SureFire Driving Academy. That's hilarious. And then Kyle missed us last week. Missed you guys too. So Ben, when you came a couple of years ago, I was just, I just really learned a lot from you. Although you were there to learn, I learned a lot from you. And when we went down, we had lunch or dinner or whatever we went to, and you kind of showed me some things you did. And that kind of always stuck in my head about how, you do things. And just tell everybody how you got in this business. I know you're second generation. Give us a little background on Ben Cross.
Sure. So again, my mother and father started the business in 1981. It was literally your typical, startup chimney business in the early 80s, where there was no chimney sweeps out there, and there was a desire and a need for it. My father had been working for his father in an industrial pipe fitting business, and he was one of 8, and my mom was one of 9, grew up in a farm out in Illinois. And at the point when my dad was, looking at potentially getting into more of a management role in his father's business, his father was too early in his career, really wasn't ready for, a transfer of ownership at that point. And they started looking at other opportunities. And, the old Mother Earth magazine, they signed up for that, and they ended up, getting their first August West and going from there. But so we're 40 years young. They started out again together a couple of years before they got employees. And I think by probably year 15 or year 20, they really started blossoming. And at that point, John and I, my older brother, we were both of age. We both got out of college. We both worked through high school summers and Christmas breaks. And at the same point, when that was kind of all happening, John and I both had ideas, and there was a lot of things that were going on in the industry that were interesting to us. You know, and that's just kind of when, you know, fire was coming out. That's when, you know, the color chim scans were coming out. I mean, I still remember as a kid, the 3-piece chim scan that stood up to my shoulders that came in, you know, the big tube television and the Polaroid extension to take the black and white photo.
That's right.
I mean, I remember going to like the equivalent of a Sam's Club or Costco as a kid and literally getting an entire shopping cart full of Polaroid film.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and then after that, it was the floppy disks. And I mean, it was
you guys were ahead of the game. If you were doing that, you were on the front edge already.
So that's the thing. I mean, my parents from the get-go, you know, it was always about maintaining a good reputation and always maintaining that the quality and level of work they were doing was on the cutting edge, or, you know, the best that they could always do. And that appealed to my brother and I. And, you know, we got out of college. I had a degree in economics. He had a degree in American studies. And, you know, it was really something that we thought there was an opportunity for us because, again, even 20 years ago, we saw there was an aging industry. There was a opportunity for growth and an opportunity for a career. And that's something that really, again, it appealed to us. We saw, you know, where it could go and the next steps that it was kind of going with. And pretty quickly, we started to grow in size. At the point when my brother and I started, we were probably at about 7 guys, and we probably jumped up to 15 in the first couple of years. And I think right now, we're between office admin and everybody else, we're probably about 30, 31 guys, 31 people rather. Right. And again, I mean, in those 20 years and those, honestly, in the last 10, the biggest growth avenues for us has been in the restoration side of the business and also the commercial side of the business. And that's something that a lot of companies, understandably so, kind of shy away from just because of the complexities of it. And honestly, the amount of legwork it takes to not only get the job, but carry it across the finish line and actually make a profit at the end.
Yeah.
And
tell me real quick. So you have a degree in economics. You looked at the chimney industry. What did you see? Did you see what you're doing now? Did you see something different? Did you have to switch what you saw versus what you learned? Like, what did you see?
So I always think big. And that's my own personal thing. I mean, I like to dream big and kind of shoot for the stars. And honestly, I think that 20 years ago, you know, what would I be doing 20 years from now? I honestly thought it would be even bigger. You know, I thought that it would happen quicker, and I thought it would happen easier. And that's just the naive. That's being naive and coming out of school. But
yeah,
I think that you know, the industry where we are today, I think, is at a healthy growth. I think that we're moving in the right direction. And I think that it's very, very intriguing to see what's going on, honestly. Yeah. I think there's some big movement in the industry towards a positive, and that's very exciting. Because, like, honestly, I mean, just like me getting into the business 20 years ago, you know, I wanted to honestly make it as a positive experience for my guys as possible. And I don't really say my guys very often. Honestly, it's my coworkers. You know, these are the people I'm working with. But I mean, we've got our lead guy has been with us for 31 years.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
This is a lot about leadership.
Yeah. But honestly, I mean, you won't find a better chimney technician who's seen with more stuff, dealt with more stuff, been through more hell than Ted. I mean, it's just like, holy moly. I mean, he has seen everything. And that's the thing. I mean, in our industry where we're at, in Philadelphia and, you know, that metropolitan area there, we have some of the most difficult, complex chimneys, I think, out there. Honestly, they were built, you know, older, taller, bigger, smaller, kind of every little thing you can put onto that. We've got a very complex world of chimneys in Philadelphia.
You do. You do. When I saw your book,
honestly, that's another part of the appealing part to us. It's just that it's never the same thing. And that's one of the things that, when I'm interviewing people, it's, if you really like breaking out of the norm, and if you really like, irregular types of days, this is the industry for you. You're not stuck in an office. You're up and down. You're out and wide. That's what I love about chimneys. It's just that every single day is different.
It sounds like you've almost doubled in size since I met you maybe 3 years ago. I think it sounds like has that happened in about 3 years for you?
So probably in the last 2 years, we've grown about 40%.
Yeah.
And it seems like on the same trajectory. It's honestly, it's just controlling that growth is where we're at.
So let's get into that a little bit. There is a question for you already. So you mentioned commercial work, and he says, when you said commercial, do you mean apartments or industrial furnace stacks? What do you mean when you say commercial work?
Sure. Commercial for us basically takes at any point pretty much anything over 10-inch diameter, anything over 40 or 50 feet. That's churches, schools, apartments. Again, in the last couple of years, we've done 265 foot tall, 26-inch stack, piggyback with a 12-inch stack right next to that, inside of maybe a 52 by 30-inch chase, 16 stories.
Oh my gosh, that's so much different than most of us work on.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That kind of job doesn't exist in every city, but it exists in a lot of them. And honestly, what I was finding 15 years ago was that a lot of those things were basically not being addressed because the HVAC companies, the mechanical contractors, the code inspectors, they literally let stuff pass because they didn't know there was a solution.
Right.
And literally just being able to provide that there was a solution for that and options has opened up the door for us in so many ways. And it's not like those solutions they don't exist. It takes a lot of, you can't skin the cat, with just one thing. It's not an end all be all thing. There's a lot of different tricks up our sleeve.
Yeah, well, when I look at some of your Facebook stuff and the stuff you post, and you don't post a ton from what I see, but you guys are very innovative. You have a lot of solutions. Like, I've seen some amazing scaffolding setups from you guys and some amazing just high level, chimney work. So let's break that down into a couple things. First, how do you get that work? First of all, is it a networking thing? Is it just a name recognition? Are you advertising for it? How do these jobs come to you?
I would say that it's probably 99% referral based.
Right.
So we really don't advertise for it at all. I, honest to God, literally just signed up for SEO yesterday. I'm not joking. We just did a website overhaul last year, and it was the first time in 15 years. Yeah. And honestly, even the reason for the SEO was just to kind of show up on the first page. It wasn't really a need. It was just more of a want.
Sure.
But no, it's honestly, it's a networking thing. It's referral based. And it's really just tried and true contractors that we work with. Or in some instances, it's homeowners that are property managers or homeowners that are also building owners. I can't tell how many jobs that literally started with chimney sweeping. Right.
And you just did such a great job that your name builds. So in that networking, it sounds like it's very organic. Mm-hmm. Are you actively in any networking groups, with maintenance companies or with any kind of apartment complexes? Like in town, we've got Greater Nashville Apartment Association. We've got some of these restoration, historical groups. Do you do any of that type of networking?
So the only organization I've been involved with was it's called the APT. It's the Association of Preservation Technologies, and that basically is I was on the board for that for 2 years, and that basically opened up the doors for architects, engineers, and preservation technology. That was nice for historical work. And again, that's kind of carried over. I got a call about that today. But in terms of the actual trade networks, I mean, honestly, I think that there's a potential that if we jumped into that too hard, too quick, we wouldn't be able to handle it.
Sure.
So I've honestly intentionally pumped the brakes on a lot of things just to try and make sure that we can refine and define what we do instead of, biting off more than we can chew. Just because, I mean, that's just a good way to set up to fail. It's like, I mean, I think it was 5 years ago, I was probably doing 8 or 10 commercial jobs a year. And I said, okay, well, next year we'll do 9 or 10. And the next year we'll do 12 or 15. And the next year we'll do 20 to 25. And we're probably at that like 20 to 25 range right now. And honestly, if you told me what we'd do next year, I mean, again, COVID pending, getting out of that, we'll probably be at that 25 to 30 range. And at that point, it'll kind of start to define who we are as a business.
Yeah.
And I haven't really made that decision yet.
I like the way you let it come to you, and you let it, you also control it. You let it come to you, but you also say no. You also say, I'm good. Like, I have a habit of like, yes, we can do it. Yes, we're going to take it on. And I like I like, your approach to it. So let's go into, so you get the job. Let's just say it's one of these big stacks of 16-story stack. Tell the people, like, what's different about, like, what do you have to know? What do you have to watch out for? Like, what are some of the things that if somebody wants to do this work, what do they really have to watch out for?
Well, number one, safety. If you can't do the job safely, it's not worth doing. And, it's one of those things that I've said from the get-go. I will not put one of my guys in a position that I'm not comfortable doing myself. And you cannot stress that enough, because if you as a business owner aren't comfortable doing it or too scared to do it, who are you to tell one of your guys to do it? I mean, that's just insane.
Right.
And there's plenty of jobs out there that you look at and it's just like, I'm not interested. I'm interested in jobs that we can successfully perform and have a good end result. And sometimes those jobs you might break even on. Sometimes jobs you'll make a good bit of money on, but at the end of the day, you have to do it safely and you have to do it well. But number one is safety. Is really, can you do the job safely? And sometimes that's really creatively thinking ways to do that, because you're working in confined spaces, you're working at excessively high heights, you're working with a group of educated people that are going to be looking for you, to trip up, mess up, any kind of way to point a finger.
Yes.
Really, you spend so much time planning on those projects only for the first day to completely change it.
You got it.
It's like you go into a job like that and you have a plan A, you have a plan B, and you have a plan C, and then on day 2 you go to plan D. And
everything off the table. Okay, here's what we've got.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, when you look at those jobs, you aren't going to get complete information from the get-go, and you really have to be able to adapt to the conditions of the job fairly quickly. But I mean, you don't know about rigging loads, you don't know about, restrictions, you don't know about just working loads of everything. You don't know, just even in an environment for the guys to work in. When you work in these commercial stacks, I mean, they are filthy. They haven't been touched in 80, 100 years. And I mean, you can't get an 8-hour day working in a situation like that. It's really like, it's a completely different world, and you just have to plan, and then plan on changing your plan.
So let's talk about that. You go into a situation, you got a ton of, you got unknowns, you've planned. How do you go about bidding a job that there's so many unknowns to you open it up? And then how do you go about change orders, and how do you go about that process? You get in, and you don't quite, there's no way to know till you open something up or get going down that path?
Honestly, there's a lot of experience that goes into learning on a job, figuring out what could go wrong, and then basically anticipating that it will go wrong that way. Change orders is not something I like to say. It's not something I like to do. I might do one or two a year, and in all honesty, it's typically owner initiated, where they'll say, hey, we want to do this, and let's do this. You know, if you're dealing with a job that's X amount of dollars and the change order is worth a couple percentage points, it's honestly not worth it to me to put that change order in, just because I feel like I should know better to be able to bid it correctly, that I'm not going to go after somebody because I didn't think about it. I mean, there's certain instances where it makes sense and, you know, you need to. I mean, there's instances, you know, on residential jobs where we get in, we're planning on going in and relining a fireplace, we take the flues out, and all of a sudden you see a three-sided chimney. You don't like to make that call, and, you know, your guys call you up and say, hey, what now? And it's like, okay, let me get in my truck, I'm going to be out there. You tell the homeowner you got a $15,000 change order, their jaw drops, and it's like, what can we do? We'll give you 9-month terms, you know, right. Let's work together. Let's figure out a way, because you've got one option: you either shut the job down and say, you know, goodbye, or you try and work together and get to a completed point where everybody's happy. And the commercial jobs, I don't think I've done a change order on a commercial job yet.
Really? That's funny. I have some friends that do commercial jobs, and they're like, change orders are part of the deal. They know going.
Oh, no, I know. And that's the thing. I mean, that's like, I literally, a couple of years ago, I saw a boat down the shore, the beach for everybody else. And the boat's name was Change Order. I mean, it was literally the greatest boat name I've ever seen. But no, that's honestly, it's par for the course for a lot of people. Is basically you bid the spec,
yep,
and you know there's going to be issues, and the second it deviates from the spec, you just hit them with change orders.
Right.
Like, you literally just bid the job to be the low bidder, and right. Once you get in the door, you hit them with changes, and that pays for everything else. Like, there's no profit in those, you know, low bidders, and right. You hate being the low bidder, but if you can work it out so that you start to get written into the spec, you're not really bidding against too many people. And that's a relationship with engineers, that's a relationship with architects, that's a relationship with building owners that, you know, they know they have an issue. Sometimes it's planned. It's typically, you know, some kind of change out or some kind of, you know, something that's going to cause you to get into the chimney side of it. But not too much planned work. A lot of it's, you know, kind of emergency-based work. So you tend to limit yourself against bidders.
It sounds like that's probably what's led to your good name too, because you're dependable. You're not going to change it on them. You know, you're just going to deal with what's coming up. And that's interesting. There's a quick question here. Cody Whitwood asks, do you act as the GC, or do you bring one in to advise you?
So we act as the GC on probably half of our jobs. Other ones will be working as a sub to the prime contractor, which is typically a mechanical or HVAC contractor.
I'm sorry, I accidentally blocked myself out. What did you say on that? Maybe
sure. So we probably act as a GC is on probably 50% of the jobs. Mm-hmm. The other 50, we're probably acting as a sub to the prime contractor, either a mechanical or a typical general contractor, or, you know, an HVAC contractor.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I met you, you showed me a kind of how you did large residential jobs, and you showed me kind of a book of work. I don't know if you remember if you showed me this, but you showed me kind of a book of work. How, I mean, your residential jobs were big. They were big. But one of the ways you sold them was, let's just say, for just a round number, the job at Miss Smith's house was $70,000. And they're like, wow, that's a ton of money. You're like, well, actually, Mr. Jones, 3 doors down, that we took care of him, was 220. You know, like, you had a way of of selling these larger jobs because one, you could do them, but two, you had experience at them and you kind of showed your experience through your sales process. Do you still do that?
Yeah, and again, I don't do it on every job. Honestly, I might do it on 1 out of 30 jobs, but transparency is key, and references are everything. I don't have a problem giving a reference that's down the street or your neighbor and telling them the scope of work that we did, because I first off know that that customer is okay with me doing that. But I'll detail the scope of work. And I can tell you, if I give you 5 or 6 or 7 pages of references, it's because 1 or 2 of those jobs on that reference list is pretty much identical to the job that you're getting bid. So that's the thing. I don't send it to every job, but I know that when giving a cast in place estimate, I can give you a handful of cast in place jobs that are 12, 13, 14, 15 flues. And you not only have the architect's name, the owner's name, the project cost, the project date, and a full scope of work, and you can see that it actually lines up. So you not only tell people that we've done this before, but you also tell them we've done it for the same amount or maybe even a little bit less before, and you can feel free to contact the owner or whoever else is the representative for that job and talk to them, because that's better than any Google ad you're going to see.
For sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that real quick. It's not something many people talk about. It's cast in place.
Mm-hmm.
That's, there was a time when that was very popular and you don't hear about that much. Can you talk about when you bring that option in, why you feel it's the right option? Like, tell me the circumstances of that process itself.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll typically use cast in place when we're looking for a structural add back into the chimney. Right. So it's not every chimney. It might be 1 out of 100, might be 3 out of 100, but it's not every chimney, that's for sure. We've been doing over the last decade, a lot of structural reinforcement. So historical chimneys that might not be used anymore, we'll go back in, do the cast in place with reinforcement added into like an engineered spec. So right. We'll actually test the materials. We'll actually, prove that it's going to do what it's supposed to do. And you've got chimneys, around us that have a lean that I can promise you will never lean anymore.
Like Pisa, they're done leaning.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's one of those things that it's an involved process. It's not any more involved in terms of the demo process as typically relining a typical fireplace. You're still removing tiles, you're still removing dampers, you're still setting up scaffolding. I think that honestly, it's been something that people shied away from because it was labor intensive, and I think that people got scared of it. And it's not a perfect product. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's not a perfect product.
There's not one out there.
Yeah, no, but in the right instance, it's definitely the best product. And like I said, it's not a big thing for us. It's something that we do, maybe one job every other month, something like that. But it's something that.
Do you make the judgment call to do it, or is it spec'd out? Because I've been called on jobs like for state parks and things, and they spec out a cast in place system.
Yeah, NPS, like National Park Services, they spec that out a lot. And that's something that, is a good opportunity. Those jobs, again, you're never going to bid that job straight up. Like, you're going to have to go as a sub through a prime. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of level of projects that, that opens the door for. Yeah.
So when you're doing, let me just kind of switch gears a little bit. You're doing a big project. What are the insurance requirements? Do you have to change, we carry like $2 million insurance, but some of the stuff you're working on is tens of millions of dollars. How does the insurance work on the insurance requirements? Are you going under the GC and you're required, or if you're the GC, do you have a special insurance policy you get for that project, or how does it work?
Yeah, so sometimes we get riders for projects to cover the lapse. Again, we're working under a $3 million umbrella and a $1 million general. And And again, we'll work under the GCs that have, $10 million policies, but certain projects call for a rider, and we just get that for the job, and just kind of rely back on that. But it's not so common that we're going to start getting a $10 million liability policy, because money doesn't grow on trees yet. So
it's trying to.
Yeah.
So tell me about working with your family. Tell me what that's like, because I'm getting ready to. I actually just closed on a purchase. We bought a kind of a big powder coating operation. It was family owned, and the reason they're selling it is because it was family owned and they had an amazing thing. But father-in-law, brother-in-law, and the other one are like this, like, we're done. And you guys are second generation working with your mom and dad. You said thank God for them, and you're working with your brother. What's that like?
It's interesting. Honestly, there's definitely been plenty of turmoil, just like you would expect at a family dinner. You get in the same thing in family business. But no, John and I, honestly, we work really well off each other. I mean, we're two totally different personalities. And that's honestly, he's kind of like the yin and the yang. I'm definitely probably a little bit more forward. He's a little bit more personable with people. But he gets into the technical side of the business, whereas I kind of go with the big thought, and we really complement each other well. Honestly, I don't know how I'd do it without him, and I don't know how you do it without me.
Right. Right.
So, like, my parents, they put every bit of 40 years of blood, sweat, and tears into the business, and they are grandparents of 5. I've got one 16-month-old. My brother has maybe a 10 and an 8-year-old. And my sister has a 12 and maybe a 9-year-old or something like that. But no, they're on grandparent duty. They're enjoying doing that. And honestly, they've just been helping us, with the transition. We're in the very final stages of that right now, which is exciting.
So it's about to be completely yours and your brother's, and you've.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, so that's very exciting, and it's been an interesting career so far.
Well, again, like my kids, both of them didn't really grow up wanting to do it. When you were a kid, it sounds like it wasn't necessarily the idea, but it was when you got out of college, and so. With your role in the company, are you like the CEO and your brother's like the chief operations officer, or do you have divisions like that, or it's just John does this and Ben does that? Like, how'd you define roles?
So we've tossed roles around for a little bit to try and see what sticks and what fits and what works best. So John actually is he's the vice president. I'm the CEO. We brought in 2 different operations people in the last year. One is to manage our day-to-day restoration and service operations. And then we brought in another operations manager to launch our sheet metal business.
Okay, so you're getting into sheet metal business as well.
Yep, so we're about 30 days out from launch on that. We've been basically planning and working on that for about 9, maybe 10 months.
Right.
We're waiting on 2 more pieces of equipment and expanded metal.
You mean you're going to make expanded metal?
No, we're not making that. But
that's the hard one to get.
We've been sourcing, large volumes of materials just because of what's going on in the industry. 2 years ago, not 2 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, it used to be we'd order something, 2 days later we'd have something in the, on the loading dock. And now it's 3 or 4 weeks, and that honestly, just quite frankly, doesn't work with our business model. And not to mention the fact that, the margins on that, they definitely exist. And when we get to a business where we're at, you need to be looking for cost savings anywhere you can.
Well,
so, we've gotten into the production of that, and we've got really highly qualified people running that up. So it's very exciting.
Well, congratulations on the new business. And you still run like a chimney sweep side too, right? You still have a residential chimney sweep side?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's day in, day out. We always, anywhere from 2 to 4 trucks that are out there, servicing and cleaning existing clients. And then, another double or triple that doing the restoration jobs.
Right.
Yeah.
So for us, we start off with chimney sweeps. It sounds like your mom and dad did too.
Yep.
Did you take it to another level, or was he kind of going that level and you guys all went there? Or did you come in and go, you know what, Dad, you can sweep the chimneys. Here's where I see our company going.
So he did obviously the chimney service. He did heater liners. I mean, Ted, was doing 2-a-days, 5 days a week, 220 days a year. I mean, like, he was doing relines every single day of the year. Again, most days, twice a day. That business kind of went away. HVAC companies, plumbers, handyman, anybody who's dropping heater liners. And, where we used to do 400 or 500 heater liners a year, we might do 150 now with 3 times as many guys. And it's just not there. The business isn't there. So when they started out, anytime there was an issue with the fireplace, they had a trusted, subcontractor that they would subcontract out the work to. And when I got involved, it was the same thing for masonry. They basically had a subcontractor that they trusted that would do the work for them. They would basically give them the name, you automatically get the job. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, my God, like, you refer this guy, he gets every single job because you referred him. We need to bring this in-house. And basically, we started working with the subcontractors to work under the job, but put one of our guys on with it and basically train and earn on those jobs, so that basically within about 3 years, both our, it was a cast in place flue dealer and our masonry subcontractor, basically we took on both of those and we were running everything through our jobs. And that was the same thing with a scaffolding contractor at one point. We subcontracted all the scaffolding out, and then we just started doing it ourselves. And it's basically, if you got a plan and you can kind of live with it for a little bit, we just kind of slowly took baby steps till we could, feel comfortable doing something correctly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, basically we have a restoration division, we've got a masonry division. We still have a service division. We've got an air duct cleaning division.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have a metal fab division.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the kind of the new interesting stress in my life, if you will.
You needed one more thing.
Yeah.
Quick question here. So I can't tell who it is. Can you provide your email address? Do you mind providing it on this, and I can put it on the screen?
Yeah, not a problem. It's Ben at djcrossinc.com.
Ben at, I'm going to put it up here, djcrossinc.com.
Yep.
Add banner and show. And so it sounds like somebody's got some questions. So tell me about when stuff goes bad. Tell me about nightmare.com chimney situation, and maybe something you learn from it, so people go, oh, okay, that's that's a lesson that people can learn from. Because big jobs can be awesome, but they can also go super south. Give me a nightmare.
I mean, there was a job, and again, I'm not going to tell you that unions are the worst. They aren't. Unions have a very good presence in a lot of industries, and without them, there'd be a lot of people that were underrepresented, underpaid, and underskilled, honestly. But sometimes they can be a thorn in your side. We were working on a project probably a decade ago. I remember it was over Martin Luther King Day weekend. It was a charter school down in Philadelphia. I want to say it was like maybe 140-foot tall chimney. And basically the second our material showed up on a Thursday. So we were working through the weekend to get, the school had a shutdown planned for it. Basically, they were going to shut the boilers down Friday. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, it was Martin Luther King Day weekend, but everything would be back on by Tuesday morning. So we literally had Thursday afternoon, material show up to the job site, just getting everything loaded in. And the Letterman jacket showed up. Steam fitters pounded his chest saying, "What's going on here?" Basically, there was a guy working on a louver on the other side of the school, literally just a louver, fresh air vent louver. And he saw this shiny stainless show up in the back of the truck, and basically showed up and said, "Look, you need to put guys onto this job or we're going to picket this." And that's not really what you want to hear when you're going into a already high stress, timeline sensitive project for a new contractor. So that was definitely an interesting evening between calls to attorneys, calls to literally the
Oh, I think I lost him.
There you go. I'm back.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah. It was a stressful night, trying to figure out what we were doing. Ultimately, we ended up putting a couple guys on the job, basically to sit on a bucket. And
really?
Oh yeah, at like $90 an hour.
Couldn't use them for anything.
Well, we put one guy to literally to work drilling holes in metal, and 8 hours a day he was just drilling holes in metal. And at the end of the day, he said he'd never worked so hard in his life. But no, I mean it was Martin Luther King Day weekend. I tell you, it was probably in the 20s or 30s. And we put one guy up on the top of the scaffolding, 140 foot in the air, and he damn near froze. I mean, that was a stressful kind of thing. Job went well, but I mean, that was definitely not, something you have to kind of be looking out for. The common question is, are you an open shop or are you union? And there's nothing wrong with being an open shop. It's just you need to pay prevailing wages. Which is a nice benefit for your guys, honestly, because
sure.
They're making good money, and you're still making good money, and it's just a little bit of a paperwork nightmare if you've never done it. Luckily on our jobs, again, like I said in the beginning, safety is absolutely paramount. So we haven't really had any incidents outside of the typical type of a cut finger, somebody tripping over something, stuff that sure it's avoidable, but it's also understandable. But that really comes down to the fact that my guys know that look, if they don't feel comfortable doing something, it's a hard stop. You just don't do it. And I think that the experience there. And just, reiterating the fact that, first off, there's safety meetings at the beginning of jobs every day. You're identifying the risks that we're running into. You're identifying what we're doing, what we're working on. Everybody's on the same page. And, that it's, I saw something a couple of years ago, and I say it quite a bit, but discretion is the enemy of standardization and consistent quality. So, it's like you don't leave anything up to discretion. You don't leave those guys at a job saying, do what you think. No, and it's your show, it's your job. If you're the one that did it, you're the one that's responsible to see it through and make sure that it's been planned correctly. And they're set up to succeed because, you think you're stressed on those jobs. I mean, those guys are equally, if not more stressed. They want to see this job go through, and they want to be set up to win.
So you brought up two things that are interesting, and we got about 15 more minutes. So again, thank you for your time. One thing, what do you do for OSHA? Like, it sounds like on these commercial jobs, is it a different situation when you have to deal with OSHA and safety? And like you said, you have a daily safety meeting on some of these jobs, or is that like company wide? Like, how do you deal with that kind of thing?
So luckily, our jobs are typically confined to one or two trades. So we don't really do any new construction work. And that's a lot. That's honestly where a lot of OSHA kind of show up, is on these new construction projects where you might have 15 or 20 different trades and 300 or 400 different guys working on any given day.
Right.
So we've been fairly fortunate in that we did have one project we were running down in Philadelphia that it was more of a general construction project, not so much of a chimney project, but it was honestly the day that it was a 4-story renovation that we took out the stairwell through the center of the building. And there was another project going on the opposite corner, literally downtown Old City, like right, same block as the first post office in the U.S. Like,
wow.
Somebody had fallen off scaffolding on the building across the street and like broke their back, broke their legs. And OSHA, literally, their office is a half a block from the project.
Oh my God.
So the scaffolding on that project was on the rear of the building, and our front of our building was completely wrapped in scaffolding. And we had just finished taking the stairwell out, and I'm sitting up there on the 4th floor. My one product manager's downstairs on the 1st floor. And like, we're all just kind of breathing a sigh of relief. We just literally dropped 4 levels of stairwell. We were, after lunch, we were going to get the protective guards up, because we literally had a 4-story drop, like we're in the middle of this. And Paul yells up to me. He's like, Ben, someone's here to see you. I'm like, who, OSHA? He's like, yeah. And I'm like,
oh,
God. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And I was like, quick, I'll hurry down. And one of the things you got to know about OSHA is you don't have to let them on your job site. You can request that they come back at a later date. And basically that's what I did. They came in and said, hey, we heard somebody fell off the scaffolding. I said, not my job. It's probably over there. They said, we're coming back. And, they didn't come back, but had they, we basically had to make safe the whole job site. And we were running a safe job site. It's just at that particular moment, had they walked in, we would have been looking at, tens of thousands of dollars in fines. And
right.
Sometimes you just got to be lucky.
That's interesting. I learned something where you say you don't have to let them on your job site. I've been told a lot of times they've been watching you for a while, and by the time they come up, they've already.
Yeah, and that's different, obviously. But in an instance, it's not like you can prevent access completely, but you can absolutely request that they come back at a later point so that you can.
That's good information. I got a question for you. Cody says, are you active in quoting the larger masonry jobs, or do you have a sales team and manager that runs the show and just toss you the big questions?
Honestly, I mean, I try and stay fairly active on a kind of a random basis on all the jobs. You can lose just as much on a small job as you can on a big job. And I find that some of those smaller jobs, they're a little easier to get, and they're a little bit more common. So I try and stay active in all of that. And, we work on a common price book among the techs, and it's something that we probably review 75 to 80% of every quote that goes out. And it might not be me. I might review 10% of the jobs that go out, but somebody that knows what they're looking at is reviewing that. And that's, again, critical for, consistent quality and consistent results, is, making sure that we're all looking at it the same way, constantly discussing things on the bigger projects and even the smaller projects that we need to do debriefs on to kind of improve and adjust. We do that. And that's something that we just, we moved into a brand new office about 3 months ago. And that really gave us the opportunity for a much more collaborative approach to job review from start to finish.
So, listen to you talk, you have a different vibe about how you approach jobs than most chimney companies do. It's more of a technical engineer type different kind of construction background. Do you come from that, or do you just absorb it, or did you basically have a mentor to because what you're saying about job review and, collaboration with the team, and I work with, you might know Hope and Gary Stevenson. They do big glass projects, and they have that same kind of high level contractor kind of vibe about how they do these bigger jobs. Where did you get your training on this, or is it just hard knocks?
Well, I mean, no, I've had a few mentors over the years. From the engineering side, one of my really close mentors was Mark Shaw. He was actually our original solid flue subcontractor. He did like all of this old house solid flues. I mean, he was, the best of the best. And I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better guy, personally and from a professional standpoint. And I pulled so much from him, and just honestly, I would go on jobs with him. I would go on bids with him, and I would figure out how, he was able to sell these big jobs and how he was able to put these customers at ease. And it was experience, it was references, and it was just a general kindness and understanding and appreciation for what he did. But he passed away this year.
I'm sorry to hear that. That sucks when you lose a mentor.
But from the engineering side, I call it Bengineering.
I like that.
Yeah. No, I've got a couple of close friends that work in the engineering side, and honestly, when I see things that are brought up, I just ask questions. And I mean, the Socratic method of asking questions is so critical to understanding the intent of jobs, the intent of products, and honestly, just the general intent of doing a job well. It's just asking questions. It's doing things like this on a forum where you get to ask things that, maybe we're kind of just, you're driving down the street saying, I wonder why they did that. Well, there's a reason, there's an intent, there's a purpose. And if you can start to understand the intent of a product or a process, it starts to make a lot more sense. And, I like to see how things work. I like to see why things, work the way that they do. And that's an enjoyable part for me.
Yeah, dude, it's fascinating to talk to you. I got one more question for you. If a guy comes to work for you, what is you bring somebody in, does he start in different places depending on his skill set, or do you have you always start in the chimney sweep division, or do you plant them in different things? And then what's the training process like for a new hire that would come work for you?
So for the longest time, it was, you're starting on the ground, you're starting on the surface, you're going to learn this thing from ground up. And I found that started to be a deterrent for some highly qualified individuals that simply could offer more than, a service tech. And so basically we've been looking for people that are not only good workers with good references, but have a particular skill set. And I could tell you that if I found somebody that was a good mechanic, whether they were a mechanic in a car shop or a mechanic as a carpenter, I can teach them chimneys.
Right, it's true.
And it's like, I can teach a chimney, I can teach a carpenter to be a mason, but I can't teach a mason to be a carpenter.
Oh, and yeah, I agree.
It's like you're looking for somebody that has more of a technical skill set, because first off, they enjoy the trade and they have, the desire to learn and actually be advancing their career in some way, shape, or form. And at that point, you just need to be a business that's exciting to work for. You hear people constantly say that, no one wants to work. Everybody's lazy. They probably just don't want to work for you.
Exactly. That's it. They don't want to work for you. There's plenty of hardworking people out there. You've got to find them and motivate them and do you show them like a career path, or do you say, hey, we're going to, here's what we think is going to happen with the company. Here's what we think can happen to you. Like, how do you how do you bring somebody on with a growing company like yours? You're clearly high level stuff, also adding divisions. Like what's the goal that you shoot for a new employee?
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it's a fairly off the cuff conversation. It's not structured in the way that if you do this, you're going to get this, because it is a growth business. And I bring in other employees to actually sit on the interviews and have them talk.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing for me to tell a potential prospect, what's going to happen, what's going to do, but it's another one to have an employee. I mean, I just had this happen a month or two ago where, we had a guy that came back to us after being away for 6 years. And the reason he came back to us because he got burned out at the other job, but he also saw the growth and he also saw what we could do here in the business. And it's really just being honest with people.
Yeah.
You can't, it's not all rainbows. You just gotta be, honest with these people. I mean, but it's without those kind of people and those kind of guys, I mean, trying to grow is, it's exhausting.
It is. And I think you kind of hit on it where if you can show progress is in a company is as important as anything. Like where you can show that you are getting better, you are having more opportunities, your people have a better, life because they work for you or with you, or, like, I think it's because I think a lot of people can't get people to work for them because they drop in and they're like, wow, there's nowhere to go. And I think for me, it becomes part of why I do keep growing the business is so I can provide opportunity, I can provide a career growth, a career path, and then they can see I want to be part of a company that is going.
Yeah, and you've done an excellent job at that. I mean, that's honestly one of the things that I took away when I came down to Nashville.
Yeah,
it's that I saw an opportunity for people to grow inside your organization, and that's something that a couple of years ago didn't really exist for us. And that's been like the last 18 months, that's been the absolute top priority for me, is making sure that we had a hierarchy available, for career advancement. Because how am I going to get guys in their mid-30s to jump ship and come work for us if they don't have the potential for growth?
right.
And that's really what pushes me to continue for the growth, is because without that, these guys, they're going to leave, and they are our entire business.
Right.
It's our name's something, but without those guys, I mean, you're nothing.
I think too, from what I know from you, you're really a conscientious, employee heart-driven kind of guy. I mean, I know you're kind of you're the hammer, I guess, or you're the more the process guy. But every time I talk to you, you are focused on making sure your employees have a good package. You talk about prevailing wages and the benefits and things like that. And I'm sure that comes across to your potential people as this is also a company that cares about its employees.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I mean, I have a saying, employee first. Like let's work on the employees first, and the business will fall in place. And it's just it's critical, because if they don't enjoy what they're doing, you are going to not enjoy what you're doing. So no, it's definitely an employee first mentality. And again, it's without those guys and without them enjoying what they do and feeling appreciated, you're SOL.
Well, and exactly, and you're also teaching a trade that in a lot of ways is kind of dying, but there's a lot of us out here trying to keep it revived. And to be clear, there's a lot of money in the trades because there's few of us. But we as leaders need to make sure we nurture those people and don't just burn them out and throw them to the side. There's a whole group of people that really want to learn this trade and are super as passionate about it as anybody ever has been. And they're out. You just got to find them and make sure, like you said, you're a good place to work for,
Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting industry. And again, I think we've got a really, great opportunity moving forward. It's going to be interesting to see, what happens in the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, I think there's going to be a major labor shortage. I think that you're going to find a lot of people that are just comfortably retiring. And I think there's going to be a really interesting level of stress in our industry trying to manage just the amount of growth, because it really is, it can be very unmanageable very quickly. And it just, managing cash flows, managing payrolls, managing, talking about commercial and big jobs. I mean, don't plan on getting paid for 120 days. Exactly. It's like you have to take baby steps throughout this process to be able to do it with as little risk as possible. And I mean, that would be my one takeaway is, these projects are all attainable. They're all manageable. It's not rocket science, but it takes a lot of planning. And it takes a little bit of guts and a lot of money. It's just, honestly, it's a big planning process that everybody can do it. It's just really taking your time and taking baby steps as you go through it.
Man, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I guarantee everybody listening to you're inspiring. I love how you have a process of growth and you think big. And I think everybody can learn from, if they watch this interview, of the right way to build a family name, multi-generational, and doing it the right way. So thank you so much for joining us.
No, I appreciate it, Mark. Thanks, guys.
All right, man. I love that. I love talking to Ben. Every time I talk to him, I learn something, and he's just one of the guys that we need more of. We need more Ben, and I appreciate that. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. We will try to be back next week. It's the homecoming for CSIA. Some of us will be on the road, so there will be a show. The week after that, we're going to have Hope Stevenson talking about mixed groups. And the week after that, we're going to have Tim Reed talking about a new product called Wi-Fi, which shows it's a really neat program for people in the chimney industry. So with that, guys, that's my time. Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you next week.